This is Bleav in Buckeyes. I'm Brian Browning with All-American cornerback Chimdi Chekwa. We got a great show for you. We got one of our guys, one of our big brothers in the building, the old boy, Jay Richardson. How you doing, man? What's going on, Jay?
What's going on, boy? Hey, I appreciate y'all bringing the old boy on, man.
Hey,
it's good
man,
to see y'all, brothers.
man.
I love what you guys are doing, too, by the way. You guys do a fantastic job. You guys know ball at a high level, obviously. But you guys got your own flavor to it. So I always enjoy watching you, checking you out, and enjoy your commentary on social platforms. So I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Real quick, so Jay Rich was a national champion at Ohio
National
State
champion,
as a freshman, right?
I didn't play a snap, but I got the ring.
That's right.
Look, you're a national champion, and our freshman year, he was a senior, so he was one of the big bros, and you got drafted by the same team that I got drafted by.
Absolutely.
Oakland Raiders. So
So you already know that bond. Once a Raider, you know how that goes.
Always a Raider.
I got a little bit of a gripe. I got to bring this up. As you say it like that, I got to bring this up. So when you was a true freshman, your old guys won the game. They brought you were the national champion. When we was true freshmen, you guys played the national championship, and you guys didn't leave us with no ring, man. What's up with that, Jay?
AB, that's foul. That's a crazy way to bring me in. So do I apologize? Look, I played defensive end. Okay. I don't know if you remember, but I actually did my job that season. I got me drafted. Now, I can't speak for what was going on that night when we played Florida in Arizona. It was a strange evening.
It was crazy.
And things did not swing our way for a number of different reasons. But I got you to the show. You got some great bowl gifts. You got to kick it a little bit, man.
It was a great time. It was a game I would never ever forget. Man, thanks for joining me. Obviously, we got a lot of news to talk about around Ohio State. Yep. Obviously, big thing. You being a defensive end, we hired a defensive coordinator. Matt Patricia has the job. When you heard that hit the ringer, that he officially going to be the guy at Ohio State, what was your first initial thoughts? And now there's been a couple of weeks or so. What's your thoughts now? Initial thoughts, and then your thoughts now that he's going to be the guy running the defense now.
So after Jim Knowles headed for one of our rivals in Penn State, which, by the way, we appreciate Jim Knowles. You know, he's a champion with the Ohio State Buckeyes. So I got no malice in my heart for him. Happy to see him happy. But that was an interesting move, and I knew we were going to have to find somebody who had a high level of football acumen, because when you lose Knowles and you lose Chip Kelly, that's a lot of football, brain power going out of the door. And you go and you get somebody like Matt Patricia, who's a guy that's got decades of high level football experience, both as a coordinator, both as a position coach, as me and Chim discussed, on both sides of the football, and he has a history as a head coach. And I think that's important when you add him into the mix at a school like Ohio State, because if you're Matt Patricia, you don't come to Ohio State because you need the money necessarily, or you need the opportunity. You come because you want to be a part of something special. You want to get something done that maybe you haven't been able to get done recently in your professional career. And so I was excited about that move, because he brings a high level football acumen to the building. Like, the entire defense just got that much smarter with him in the room. We all know he comes from the Belichick coaching tree. We've all got some guys that have played underneath Bill and Matt, and any of those guys will tell you they know more about football than anyone they ever knew could know about football. And with Matt Patricia, you're going to get a very, very brainy defense. I mean, he's going to have an answer for everything. He's going to have, different beaters and schemes for every scenario that Ohio State's going to face. And I think for our young guys, it'll be a real boost for them to be able to be coached underneath a NFL level brain like that. That's going to prepare them for the next level. So it's a really, really cool hire for Ohio State.
Yeah, I think one thing. So when it initially happened, I wanted to get straight to the sources. I reached out to anybody I knew that was a part of that Detroit Lions team when Matt Patricia was the head coach. And I reached out to the guys I knew that played under Matt Patricia when he was in New England. And I got very different perspectives, right? The perspectives of those guys in New England was great coach, as you mentioned, great football mind, he understands a lot about football. A lot of those guys said they learned so much about the game under him. In Detroit, I got a little different perspective. And to pretty much sum it up, it was some of the biggest challenges in Detroit. He really struggled with adapting to the guys that were in that locker room. He was trying to create a culture that didn't necessarily fit the group that was there. And the other thing that I picked up from those guys, they said the defensive scheme and what he was trying to implement was a lot of times too complex. Now, it's still a small sample size, right? I don't know everybody that played those teams, right? I only know a few guys. But I want to get both of y'all perspectives on that difference between Detroit and New England, and is that any type of cause for concern coming into Ohio State?
Can I just start by saying, and I'll leave you some meat on this bone, B, but you got to understand, there's a difference between being a coach, specifically a coordinator, and a culture builder, right? When you're a head coach, you're asked to build culture. You're asked to come and install. Look at Matt Campbell in Detroit now. He knew the assignment. Like, I have to, from thin air, develop a culture in this building, and I'm going to make that culture about who I was as a player, which was tough, gritty, attention to detail, and we're just going to go harder than everyone else, and eventually all the other guys will assimilate under this culture, right? So when you look at Matt Patricia, he was never a high-level player. Like, that's not like he can come from that place. So he's got to come from what he knows, which is how Bill did things in New England. But they already had their culture.
Right.
So it's hard to go from ground zero and just build a culture out of thin air. But the reason I'm not concerned about that is because he's not being asked to do that at Ohio State. It's the perfect job for him. He doesn't have to build a culture. All you got to do is get the defense operating at a high level. It's Ryan's job to build the culture, and the culture's there. It's a championship culture now. So all you got to do is plug yourself in, understand what worked for this defense last season, understand who these kids are, get to know these kids really well, and then tailor whatever you build around their skill set, and I think you'll have some success.
Yeah, Jay, I'm gonna piggyback that because I think you hit it right on the head, right? You almost see the same thing out of the Belichick tree with like a Josh McDaniels, right? Like, he goes to the Raiders, right? He gets a head job, or he goes to Denver, he gets a head job, and it's just like essentially just haywire, right? Until they got to let the guy go. And then you see the same thing with Matt Patricia. He goes to Detroit, and it's just like it doesn't really work out, right? Doesn't mesh right. And I feel like what's happened, like you said, it's the difference between a coordinator to a head coach. Would you say?
Don't forget Flores. Flores, who went to Miami.
But yeah, Flores, like it was, he had a lot of stuff going on. He sued the owner when he left, man. So we go bring up Flores.
Hey, that was bananas.
His situation, man. But you almost felt like they took those jobs and they went in there like, I'm going to be Belichick, right? I'm the Belichick of the Detroit Lions. I'm the Belichick of the Oakland Raiders, and it doesn't work out, right? Because Bill has this history of guys knowing how he runs his teams, how he runs the organization, how he's able to challenge guys, and they have to kind of step up to that plate and get there. When you're not already that guy, like, you got to build a relationship. You just can't come in here and start throwing your hat and coming up with rules and things of that nature.
Yeah.
You're going to reject it. We're going to fight it, and you're going to be out the door. And that's what it feels like. I wasn't there. That's what it feels like happened to those guys in those situations. But like you say, Jay, that's not his job at Ohio State. He get to come in with a defense that was with number one defense in the nation last year, right? So those guys got to already see how to operate at a high level. And he needs to come in and kind of essentially keep it going. Obviously, he has some new guys, not the same faces, but those guys already understand what their job is. They already understand that they can play at that level. So he has to give them that as well. And once he kind of gives them that and show that he could care about defense and run things in the right order, I think the guys will fall in line and he'll be able to kind of have that success as well.
B, you nailed it right there. Everybody that comes from that coaching tree is not a great coach, okay? Just because you operated under a great coach doesn't mean you're a culture builder. It means you're a great coach, and you might understand X's and O's, but it doesn't mean you know how to build culture. And those are two very different things. And you see it in the corporate world all the time. You see it in a lot of different worlds where everyone thinks, oh, well, you just got to go build a culture. Like, no, man, that don't grow on trees. If you're not that guy, you're not that guy. And that's okay. You can still be a fantastic football coach. And I think he will be that. Yeah. But the reason they wouldn't got Mike Vrabel in New England is because it's not just because he played under Bill. It's because he went to Tennessee and built a culture there. That was a tough football team. They won football games they shouldn't have won with just grittiness a lot of times. And I think that was Mike as a player. So that culture was already in him. And I think that's when it aligns that way, it can look really good. But you're not just going to do it because you were at a place where they were doing it at a high level. You know how to do that or you don't. But
people forget about
to do that.
People forget about Chip Kelly's stint as an NFL head coach. Where
and the Eagles,
a lot of success for first year with the offense and the scheme, but he was trying to create a culture too that was similar to his Oregon culture. He got rid of some really good players, some really good talent, and it didn't work out. But Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator, we saw how well that worked out. So I think there's some similarities there. I think there's some positives to having a guy. We talked about it before, B. In choosing whether it was offensive coordinator if they didn't go from within, and choosing the defensive coordinator if they didn't go from within and elevate a guy. You want to get a guy, one, who's more qualified than the guys that are on the staff, right? You bring in one of these young, hot defensive coordinators in college. How does Coach Walton look at that, right? Like, is this guy more qualified than me? How does Matt Guerrieri look at that? How does Larry Johnson, who's been around football, look at that? So go get a guy who actually is more qualified so that you're not really rocking the boat within what you have, and you're not disrupting what you found last season. Those position coaches are good coaches for recruiting, and they contributed to that national championship scheme that won. You don't want to lose that. And I think that's one of my biggest things in this hire. I wanted him to get somebody who was qualified, somebody who was a leader that, he can walk, him and Ryan, they could look at each other eye to eye and they can build for the next team. They could build for the season. Some of their experience can rub off on each other. But this will be my biggest concern. If there was a concern, I don't want to point to the negative side of it, but the biggest concern would be one of the things that I mentioned some of the Detroit guys talking about was the complexity of defense. Mm-hmm. And I had a very brief stint in New England, just in the offseason. And then, a lot of what you mentioned, Jay Rich, is that, Matt Patricia, his defense, and Bill Belichick, they know how to scheme up a defense. They know how to scheme up a defense so well that in 2011, they lost so many players. They had offensive players playing defense, and they still continue to go and have a deep playoff run. The one thing that I thought Jim Knowles struggled with when he got to Ohio State was at Oklahoma State, you didn't always have the best players. So scheme is what won you games defensively.
Yeah.
When you get to Ohio State, you really got to balance out that scheme with talented players.
You got to flip it.
It's not an easy thing to do if you're one of those guys who's super analytical, who has all these play calls. I watched the podcast with Matt Patricia and Julian Edelman. He talks about this defensive Bible. He has all these play calls, all this stuff. You like that from an ability for somebody who has seen everything, right, and can adapt to whatever you do best. But one of the things that, and I assume that Ryan Day talked about this in the interview with them because he already dealt with it in some way, shape, or form, is that a guy coming in, if he was to come in and want to implement his defense and do it kind of like the Patriots did it, where, we're going to get in the right call, we're going to do the right things, etc., it could be challenging because really in college, when you're at Ohio State, there's a balance between having the right scheme and just having guys being able to go out there, line up, and play fast and free. So that would be my biggest concern if there was any type of concern.
Chim, man, one, yes, you nailed it, right? Like, one thing you learn over your journey as a player, and then as an analyst, which we are now, is, man, the best teams don't always need the best schemes if they have the best players. And when you look at an Ohio State, and I'll give you a quick story about, something we talked about off camera a little bit when I was being coached out in Oakland by Rob Bryant. Okay, so he's coming from New England, and the kind of players they had. Good players, but Chim, the kind of players we had in Oakland.
Right.
freak athletes.
Some dogs.
Dogs, bro. Not organized, but freak athletes.
Undisciplined. But
Undisciplined as hell. Might take cigarette breaks, but freak athletes. So when he got there, he's watching us go through drills. He's watching us, run and do all the workouts. And he was like, okay, this is different than New England, man. Like, he's just sizing us up. And he's like, okay. And after about week 3, we held almost like an emergency meeting as a defense. And he was like, all right, guys, I got to apologize to y'all. I got this all wrong. You guys don't need some of the schemes I'm trying to throw at you. He was like, this is stupid. We're going to play like over to the field, cover 2, like cover 1, whatever. We're going, because, Al Davis always going to be a cover 1 or 0. That's fine. And we're going to let our front 4 rush and you backers, get a little bit of depth and kind of cover up wherever our guys up front miss. And we're going to let you guys ride because I didn't understand what I was working with, and now I do. And it wasn't because the players were stupid or couldn't pick up on it. It was because they were so talented. Sometimes you might see a block and go, I can beat that. And you would just go beat it naturally. And that was outside the scheme. And so when you got guys who could play above the scheme, you scrap some of the scheme and you just let the players play. And I think that's something that Jim Knowles, it took him a little bit to kind of get a grasp on, as you said. But once they did, this was the number 1 defense in the country at Ohio State.
That's very good points, guys. Now I want to, ask this question because obviously you guys both for Oakland played with Oakland Raiders, right? Not the Vegas Raiders, right? But obviously you guys played college football as well. I'm looking at Patricia's history, right? He spent a very small amount of time in college. I think I'm looking at it. I think he spent about 3 or 4 years in college. Most of it was as a GA. And then all the rest of the time was all in the NFL. So all this real work kind of took place in the NFL. From your guys' perspective, doing both, what's that big difference when you're playing college football and things that made you guys successful as a defense at Ohio State that once you got to the NFL, the difference in, playing NFL ball, pro level ball, and the things that you had to kind of, adapt to and do when, once the ball was snapped?
Yeah, I'll go.
I'll say this. For Matt Patricia. Oh, no, go ahead, Chim.
Now, I was going to say the biggest thing is time, one. Obviously, when you're in the NFL, your time is all devoted to football. First and foremost, you're getting paid for it. In college, you get limited time. And I remember in college playing under Luke Fickell and Coach Haycock, I remember the linebackers, they spent so much time at the Wood. They spent so much time because they needed to know the most defensively. And it wasn't realistic for them to be able to go out there and execute this defense without just being in the Wood at 6 a.m., going through all the plays and all that stuff. And I remember thinking like, damn, we don't spend that much time as corner in there. And it's like there's some things that I knew and understood that other corners didn't, right? And the challenge is always in college, do you have enough time to really implement this defense for everybody to pick it up and execute it against offenses that are trying to disrupt, mess with your eyes, do a bunch of motions, do a bunch of shifts. So that still speaks to that ability to balance that scheme with the talent that you have and making sure everybody's on the same page and being able to execute the defense.
Couldn't agree more with the time aspect. And that's something that will be probably frustrating for Patricia a little bit at first, is getting back in that groove of understanding, like, I don't get as much time with these guys as I'm used to at the next level. So I got to cram a lot into these periods of time. And these kids have other things on their plate. And then you got to want to recruit. Like, he wouldn't be coming to college football if he didn't understand that recruiting also comes with it. Like, that is an aspect of it that has nothing to do with anything in the NFL. But in college, it has everything to do with it. So understanding that you really are a part of people's families more than you were in the NFL. And there's going to be social interactions that are required. This ain't just business. This is a holistic approach to leading young men. And I think he's coming around at a good time, though, because in the era of NIL, it is feeling a lot more like NFL in these locker rooms. And if you ever seen one of these player parking lots, it looked like an NFL parking lot. So certain things are going to feel familiar.
Yeah.
So he said that. I watched his podcast with Julian Edelman, and he talked about how college is starting to feel more NFL-like. Where, like, I think he specifically mentioned, like, if you need a specific position, like you don't have it on your team, you could just go get that guy in the transfer portal to fill. So I think he's interested in kind of this new wave of college. And you got to think, like, with the position coaches that are in place, while he still needs to recruit, some of that burden is kind of taken off of him with, guys like Coach Walton who are getting these top DBs, guys like James Laurinaitis with the linebackers, Larry Johnson with the defensive line. He may actually be able to lean a little bit more in structuring defense, kind of being the head coach of the defense and working directly with Coach Day to making sure that they're kind of on the same page. Again, my biggest thing is that ability to be collaborative with the assistants that exist already, and being able to keep some of what we've did in the past, this past year, like some of the passing game and all this stuff. That's why I like that they promoted Coach Walton to co-coordinator, Coach Guerreri to passing game coordinator. I like that because I like what we did last year. I don't want to lose it. I like seeing Caleb Downs moving around in different spots with his IQ. And I honestly like Caleb Downs being able to play under a coach like Patricia to continue to develop, because you need Caleb Downs is such a smart player that he has to have a coach who's also a very intelligent mind for him to continue to grow and develop. Otherwise, he's getting shorted at the end of the day.
He's going to love Caleb Downs walking in the door. I mean, he's going to probably watch a lot of tape from this past season. He probably has, and he's going to get an understanding of who he's got in the building, who he's working with. But you just brought up a really interesting point. I think the reason you saw Coach Walton get that co-coordinator position is almost like insurance. So let's make sure we don't completely come in and he doesn't go, okay, everything is out on the table. This is my defense now. Let me show you what I can do. No. We don't need you to do that. We just need you to keep this thing going in the same direction it was already headed, and be able to apply some of the high-level football knowledge that you've amassed over your years and instill that into these guys and get them up to speed mentally without overwhelming them, and just play sound defense. It's Ohio State. We're going to score points. We're going to have a high-powered offense. We always have. I can't remember a year we didn't, except maybe some of those Beckman years. I love you, Todd, but that might have been the only time I can remember Ohio State not being like, oh, yeah, we're going to hang damn near 40 on everybody. Yeah. It's, hey, can you just make sure this defense is where they're supposed to be and let these athletes shine? That's all you got to do, big dog.
Those are good points, man. I wanted to ask one more thing before we start to kind of wrap up here regarding the show. Obviously, like we just did, I mean, we giving a lot of pat on the back. We're national champions, and so it's rightfully so, right? We're making a lot of great decisions in regards to how we're building the program, how we're promoting, and things of that nature. So is it safe to say that we giving Coach Day like an official thumbs up on all these decisions that he's making and his new job of being this general of Ohio State? We pat him on the back for everything that's going on here. That safe to say?
What? Of course. Man, listen. I'm not no one in Columbus, Ohio is going to completely absolve Coach Day for what's happened with the team up north. We understand that. We get that. We know where we're at. We know how people feel about that game. But aside from that, and I was beating this drum back in late November after the loss, I said, the guy is, at the time, he was like 66-7 or something crazy. I said, dude, the only coach in his first 6 years as a head coach who had a better record was like Newt freaking Rockne. Where are you going to find somebody, who is it you think's going to come in and just all of a sudden it'll get better? It can get a lot worse. Ask Nebraska. Ask a lot of other schools that thought they can go get better. It can get worse. You have a great young head coach. When he lost to Harbaugh over, a couple of years ago, everyone was like, oh, man, got to get rid of him. I said, dude, Jim Harbaugh is almost in his 60s. He, Ryan at the time was like 44. I said he got a master class put on him. Okay, that's fine. Fair. Take that L. But he's learning. He's getting better every year. He's a young head coach. You can imagine what he's going to develop into by the time he's in his late 40s, 50s, and it getting to the meat of his coaching reign. He's going to be potentially a Saban-ish kind of guy if he stays on his current trajectory. But you got to be willing to stick with him. So I got no problem with where he's at right now. He's a champion now, so everything, hey, ain't nothing you can really say
now, right?
But people always want to microwave it. Sometimes you got to put it in the oven and let it get crispy, and that's what he's had to do, man.
Yeah, I agree with that take. I think, this past year, him finishing strong with a national championship was very, very important.
Yes.
To balance out some of the challenges with Michigan. I think this next year is going to be an important year in terms of just being able to evaluate his continued development as a head coach, because what we saw this past year is his ability to be able to give up the play call and lead a team, take them to a national championship. It was a national championship caliber team, and they got it done.
Yeah.
Right. The next year you have the post-national championship, where you lose coaches because you had success. You lose a ton of seniors, a ton of players because, they were great players. And now you have to develop the next group. You have to put guys in position from a coaching standpoint and then create this new team. And it's just a new challenge. I think, everybody, it's weird in college football now because, the season's longer. And then the championship ended. It's just like we're already on to the next so fast. The spring game is about to come up in like the spring football is coming up in a month. Yeah. Everything just ended. But that's the new challenge, right? That's the new challenge to have that quick turnaround where you didn't get a ton of time to really spend time identifying what players you're going to recruit, to identify coaches and bring coaches in, and you got that quick turnaround. Now they got young quarterbacks, right? They got a bunch of guys to replace on defense. It's just going to be an interesting transition. But because he won the championship, I got all my faith and trust. He has a pretty long leash. The only thing I would say is that come November when you play that team up north, there's no more messing around with that. Outside of that,
hey bro, this city gonna forgive it because you want it all. We love you and you want it all, and you that dude. Right. If you drop 5 in a row to these boys, it's all gonna start all over again, and that's what I hate for Ryan.
Yeah,
but that's just the reality.
That's the reality.
If you was to drop another one, it's gonna all happen again. So he doesn't have the luxury. Also, unlike Harbaugh, who could just win it and bounce. He got to actually rebuild and reload each bullet and get all of this figured out. And you brought up a great point. He learned to take a back seat to maybe the hands-on stuff and have more of a CEO kind of role in the building while he lets his coordinators do their job and lets his position coaches do their job. And he's kind of steering the ship. And he steered them right to a national championship. And yes, they won it because they had so many great players come back. But a lot of that is you have to give him credit for. He was able to make sure that they put that budget together and have people talk about the $20 billion NIL, whatever. I don't know what the number was. I know most of it was spent keeping guys in the building.
Right.
And that is something that I think a lot of coaches are going to now look at as the new blueprint for how to win in this modern era is, you can go out free agency, portal and get whoever. But, man, if you don't keep your best guys in the building and spend that collective money on keeping all your best stuff in the building, you're going to struggle. And I think Ryan did a great job of that, and that isn't talked about enough.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah, but so he kept those guys in the building, and he had to get prepared for a playoff run. I think, to me, Coach Day, more so than other coaches, has been more prepared for how college football is going to change. Right? When you talk about hiring Matt Patricia, you're talking about hiring a coach who's been on a lot of deep playoff runs, won a championship, and they have to get the team ready to go on another deep playoff run. That reality, people don't really, they're still thinking old college football. It's not old college football no more. Like, you got to go on a run. You got to be healthy during that run. You got to understand, what we did during the season may not be what we do on the run. Like, that's just the reality of it.
Yes.
I remember being in the Patriots, and they would talk about, when November, December comes, the weather changes, the play calls change, the way we scheme up defense changes because, it's a different situation than during the season. And I don't think a lot of college coaches have been in that mind frame. And I think Ryan Day is. So I trust. I got a lot of trust in his approach.
Chim, why do you think, beautiful point, because people got to understand this is why Ryan brought in so many NFL guys over the last, 2 seasons and now moving forward with Matt, because he knows he could kind of see around the bend and go, man, 12-team playoff, that means we playing until January, middle of January. Like, that is a long season for a college kid, bro. That 14, 15 weeks, that's NFL territory. So you might as well put together an NFL roster and get you some guys and And why do you think Stanford hired Andrew Luck to be their GM? Because they know, like, bro, everyone's preparing now for college football to be treated as a professional sport, which it is anyway. So let's just call it what it is. And let's now start to build around that concept. That's what it is, man. Like, it's going to be a whole different world moving forward. And I think Ryan got kind of tossed in the fire as the first one to try to figure this blueprint out. And he won it all in the first 12-team playoff. That's crazy. Like, that he should get a lot of credit for.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, obviously, it's a season. It's funny. It's like it's a season that none of us are going to ever forget. We'll be talking about this season for the rest of our Buckeye lives. Yeah. Ryan Day put this team together. They went on this run and had this historic national championship here at Ohio State. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Chim, you got anything else for Jay, man? I'm about to.
So one more question defensively. Do you think how much 3-4? Because Matt Patricia comes from 3-4 defense. I know the fans want to know. How much three down lineman type snaps do you think we see under a Matt Patricia led defense?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So here's what I'll say. Matt's a smart guy, so he'll know the principle shit, that we know, which is your defense can only do what your personnel allows it to do. If he walks in that building and looks at the men he's got to work with and goes, we can it's a 3-4 type of D line, then you might be able to run it. But you don't want to force a round peg into a square hole, or however they say that. So I think with him, and this is just what I've seen from his defenses in the past, anything 2nd and 6 and above, you're probably gonna see more of a 3-4 nickel hybrid kind of deal where they're gonna bring in an extra DB and you'll have some exotic stuff happening. However, up front, he wants guys' hands in the ground. So I think he'll have his pass rushers. Go back and look up New England stuff. Anytime it was 2nd and longer than 7 or 6 or 7, they had 4 down linemen, even when they were a 3-4. Guys' hands were in the dirt. They weren't doing the jack or the stud, stand-up kind of stuff. Everybody hand in the dirt, and I want my guys rushing. So as a D lineman, I love that because I just felt like nothing frustrated me more than when we had like Jack Sawyer or Tui Maloau standing up and dropping in the coverage on 3rd and 8. I'm like, dude, you want your best players doing what they do best at all times. Like, no need to trick anybody. Put your best pass rushers out there and let them do what the hell you're paying them to do. So I think that's what you're going to get from Matt because he's a smart guy. He's not going to, he ain't going to mess around with that. Like, if it's 2nd and anything longer than 6 yards, I want my boys, all 4 of them, hands down, and there'll be some twists up front, and it'll be those 2 edge guys taking off. And then they will get a little bit creative in the back end. And listen, that's for you smart guys, you safeties and corners and linebackers. Y'all got to figure that stuff out. Up front, we got a job to do.
No, that's a good point.
I think it's going to focus a lot on that big nickel, really being able to cover the pass, but having the guys out there to stop the run. And, that doesn't come up a lot during the year until you get to a Michigan game. It's likely going to come up when you get to a Penn State game. I think they kept both their running backs. Penn State always has a bunch of tight ends, and they never seem to really have explosive receivers. So it's likely those are 2 teams where you're going to see kind of that approach to being able to spread you out but run the ball. And I think, Matt Patricia coming from, the Patriots, playing that big nickel, having a guy like Caleb Downs and others being able to go out there and cover guys, but really being there to be able to stop the run. I think that's something that we're going to see a lot on the back end.
You got to be able to stop that 12 personnel and that 22 personnel. That's what you're going to see in November. That's what you're going to see when that weather get bad. So you just got to be ready for that. I think he knows that. Like, as you said, this is why he's there, because he's lived this at the NFL level, and he's going to bring all that expertise and all of those little savvy nuances to the game that come later on in the season. You're going to have probably the most prepared Ohio State defense that we've had in a long time. We just don't hope they overload them up here and still let them do what they do best.
And I was just going to say, as a former offensive lineman, you love to see the great defensive end standing up and not on the ball when it's snapped on 3rd and like, oh, he's doing something else. Great, fantastic. I would take the linebacker or the corner to say whoever other than this guy. This is officially a playoff because this guy's dropping in the flats. I love it.
I used to hate seeing that. Nothing would frustrate me more than when this happened. It didn't happen a whole lot this season as much, but like last season, it'd be like, I would be watching. Obviously, I watched the ends very closely, and I would see, Jack JT kind of get into a little bit of a rushing rhythm, and I'm like, okay, he's setting something up. And then all of a sudden, 3rd and 11, and you got 44 dropping back into the flats, and I'm like, no, that's the no. He ain't gonna do anything. Yeah. He need to be on 71 ass. Yeah, bro, that'll frustrate the D lineman quickly.
Yeah, that's for sure. But Jay, I kind of messed up your intro a little bit. I didn't give you all your stats. I got too excited. But we got Jay Richardson, 7-year NFL vet. You catch my man on ABC at any given time, breaking down Ohio State football. He doing all the ABC. I think he do the weather a little bit now, right?
Every now and again, I do some high school. I do some weather. I've called 2 games for ESPN on ESPN3. Some fun stuff, man. But I'm a dude that love ball just like y'all, and I find the theater of college football the most enticing and entertaining form of reality TV that there is, and that's really what it is. And it's a fantastic thing to watch unfold.
Yeah, that's for sure. And also, if you got any real estate needs, commercial, residential, Jay's your man. Follow him on social media. He's everywhere, man. Just look up his name. He'll pop up. At
Jay Richardson 99. You got a building you want to buy or sell. You got a house you want to buy or sell. I'll let you boy, man.
That's great. That's fantastic, man. We really appreciate it, man. Thanks for taking your time.
Always, man. Like I said, I'm a big fan of both of you guys as individuals. I love that you guys are doing this show together. Anytime I can ever contribute, always happy to do so because you guys are fantastic at what you do.
We appreciate it. And for all the fans out there, follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all the platforms you can catch our podcast on. We're going to end this show like we always do with a nice OH.
Ayo.
Go Bucks. Talk to you guys soon.